for joining me. An excellent topic. Wald Klimczyk, my name, City Attorney for the City of Janesville. And I thought then for people viewing, I'd read a few paragraphs from materials that I sent out to each of you separately, and before and then today from the League of Wisconsin Municipalities and a couple other sources, so that there's a context to our discussions and questions. So with your indulgence, let me just do that.
Yes.
Claire Silverman, legal counsel for the Wisconsin League of Municipalities here in Wisconsin, says that Wisconsin's open meeting law, and that's what we're basically talking about here, open meetings of a governmental body, applies with equal force to every city and village, regardless of size or other characteristics. It applies whenever a governmental body conducts the business that it is entrusted with. So it's critical that members of the public as well as local officials are aware of the open meeting law and understanding its requirements. The open meeting law is found in sections 19.81 through 19.98 of the Wisconsin statutes. The law does not require absolute openness. However, the legislative intent is that the public is entitled to the fullest and most complete information regarding the affairs of government as is compatible with the conduct of governmental business. To that end, the law requires that all meetings of governmental bodies be preceded by sufficient public notice to apprise the members of the public what the business is that the governmental unit's going to be conducting, when and where, how. The law authorizes governmental bodies to meet in closed session without public participation if the subject matter comes within one of a number of exceptions set forth either in particular statutes, federal statutes, mostly state statutes. The state public meeting law on closed sessions does refer to other statutes, so they could include some federal reasons to go into closed session, but that's rare. 19.85 has the enumeration of the public policy reasons to go into closed session. And Wisconsin courts have also come up with certain decisions that expanded on those categories and limited them as well. Now, in particular, today we're going to be talking about that. So the walking quorum is the particular topic, and that would be in the context of these open meetings of any governmental body. It applies to governing bodies and every committee, board, commission, or other subgroup, ad hoc or permanent, created by a governing body. It applies to cities, towns, villages, counties, the state. And the walking quorum is the one that provides and actually creates some of the greatest difficulties for governmental units statewide, because most of those occur outside of a noticed public meeting. And it can apply to not only individual meetings one-on-one with individual members of a governing body or committee, but also through emails, phone messages, texts. The greater the increase and expansion of social media, the more it expands to different forms of communication. Now, the walking quorum, in my perspective, is an agreement, and this is where it becomes prohibitive. All the decisions of a governing body, be it for a city, county, town, or village, really should take place in an open meeting with the proper notice of what the agenda item is about, with sufficient identification so that the public is not surprised as to what the topic is and what the decisions potentially might be. It doesn't have to be absolutely specific, but just apprise sufficiently. It's that rule of reason. If there's a reasonable notice that a reasonable person under like or similar circumstances will understand what's occurring, then that's sufficient notice. The walking quorum is a decision, tacit or express, by two or more members of a governing body to take action a certain way outside of that public meeting that's noticed, to take action that would affect the business or the legislative authority of that governing body. So there's really two types of business that a governing body, like the city council, and here we're talking specifically about a city council, because we're with the city of Janesville, of course, would be business items, resolutions where you're adopting a resolution like the budget, or to borrow money, or to build a certain bridge, or legislative, where you're adopting ordinances that govern behavior of members of the community.
Can I interrupt you?
Sure.
I want to be sure that I understand what you just said. What I heard you say is that the subject matter, essentially, of what's affected or of what's prohibited from a walking quorum is that you cannot agree to something that would affect the business or legislative authority of the city council?
Outside, that's correct, outside of the public meeting itself. So there can't be agreements to
Right,
decide
you-
a certain way before
right.
the meeting.
Right, I understand you can do whatever you're gonna do in a meeting that's been
Right.
properly noticed.
Okay?
But outside of a properly noticed meeting, what you can, I'm trying to get at the subject matter
Mhm.
that's involved, and it sounds like it's the business or legislative authority of the city council.
Correct. So anything that the council would decide by action, an action would be some type of vote, where you're vested by statute or constitutional powers, home rule powers under the Wisconsin Constitution, or statutory authority. And the primary statutory authority for cities, where all the business and legislative functions are vested in the Common Council in Wisconsin, is 62.11 sub 5. That says all the business is totally within the council's authority. So if it's something that the council would have to decide as a whole through a majority vote, and in Janesville, because we're a council manager form of government, there's a council manager statute. And that statute says that any item of business, resolution, or ordinance requires at least 4 out of the 7 votes.
Can you give that citation again? Anything that's to be decided by a vote, you said, and then you gave a citation?
Well, the empowerment statute is 62.11 sub 5.
But does that apply to city manager form?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Chapter 64 applies to council manager forms of
Right.
government, that's more specific. But when that one is silent, then you can go to chapter 62,
Okay.
and then 66, 65, there's some other statutes that it applies.
So 62.11 subdivision 5?
Yeah, that talks about the business of the community and
Okay.
the power and authority. All good, for all good reasons and purposes, I think is the way the statute's kind of, I'm just paraphrasing now. For the good interest, best interest of the community, then the council's empowered to make those decisions.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
that's for the business and the financial and the legislative functions. Sure. So then the walking quorum, when I read all the different attorney general's opinions and court decision, the league, and I'll quote back to the league opinion here in a moment from Attorney Claire Silverman. It really comes down to that tacit or express agreement where there's enough council members that decide something outside of a meeting, and this is why it's prohibited. That's why it's called a walking quorum, where they can either adopt something, they've already agreed ahead of time to adopt something, and that's kind of the simpler approach of a quorum, or that there's a sufficient agreement amongst members that can block the adoption of an item of business.
Right.
For example, if there's a supermajority vote required, sometimes it's a 2/3, sometimes it's a 3/4 vote. Sometimes it could be 6 out of the 7 council members are necessary to adopt an item of business. Well, if 2 council members agree ahead of time to vote against that item, well, now they've already decided the item of business outside the meeting, if that decision's made outside the meeting. That could even be through a phone call, or a personal visit, or a text message, or something. And the Attorney General and the courts and the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, and in my opinion, is that that's a prohibited type of a public meeting. Because you've decided something outside the noticed meeting that affects the outcome of something that affects the community and the taxpayers.
So are you saying that we cannot communicate with each other about things we support or will not support? I mean, you're saying even 2 people?
If that item
Are
of
the
business,
problem?
if that item of business, and see, it comes down to, Councilmember Dupre, if the item of business is such that it would take a supermajority vote, but not on all items, and that's where it becomes tricky.
Which items are that?
Certain types of challenged annexations and rezonings, for example, sometimes take supermajority votes if there are petitions filed by property owners that are affected. Vacation of streets is another one where if somebody files a petition to challenge it, changes it from a majority vote to a supermajority vote of some type.
Okay, so in our agenda, it would say supermajority required?
Yes, in the agenda materials, in the
Right.
memoranda from the division department head who's handling that topic, it would say what the suggested motion is, and it should say what the required number of votes would be. So then that's where you would find that information.
Okay, so the ones you cited would be property,
Annexation, property, zoning type of questions.
other things, it's the 4?
The 4. Reconsideration is another one that would take a supermajority vote, like if something's already been adopted and the council wants to
Go back.
reconsider it, correct. But everything else, the fallback is it's at least 4 council members, regardless of the quorum present. So even if you have only 5 council members, then you still need the 4 out of the 5. It's not a majority of the quorum present. It's, you have to have of the members, that's the way the statute's written, it's of the members of the governing body. So if you have 4 council members, that is a quorum, because that's by statute, a majority, but then you need all 4 council members to adopt something. And that has happened.
The other one, I think if I read it right, if we knew that somebody was gonna be absent, it'd only be 6 of us.
Mhm.
Like if when you go to,
Right.
on your trip, if we found that out, okay, he's gonna be gone, Sam and
Now's
I,
the time
the
to
3
do
of
it.
us could block it,
Mhm.
even though we didn't have a 4th vote.
Correct. Correct.
You could get in
That
trouble
would be,
on
that would be legal.
What?
That would be legal, because it's of the body.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Don't you always need 4 to pass something regardless
Yes.
how many are there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, but
So-
you could block it because you wouldn't have the 4th vote, if you were against
Because
it.
she was the 4th vote.
Mhm. That's
Yeah.
I
correct.
see. I see.
So if I didn't want it, and I called Sam up and
Right,
called you up and says, you know, I don't know
right.
what Kay was, but I'm really against it, and I hope you are too.
Yeah.
And here's my reasons, and, you know, please think about this, so it doesn't pass.
Right.
That's a no-no, right?
Mhm. Yes.
And I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's what we're here- we're
Wald. Do
discussion,
we have an
sure.
hour set for this?
Well, whatever time you want, I'm here.
Okay, yeah, I have separate plans, just to be clear.
Okay.
Well, then I'm gonna just follow up on that. So if we were just using this case, but any case, we can still send information to the other 6, as long as
Yes.
we don't ask for a course of action.
Correct.
So if there was something like on sidewalks, and I could say, here's the history of sidewalks as I see it, and here's the pros, can I even say the cons?
Yes.
As long as at
Yes.
the bottom I say, I hope you agree with me, I leave that out, but just,
Mhm. Sure.
you can send factual
Share
stuff,
information and factual, sure.
just as long as we don't
Mhm.
ask for a course of action.
Correct.
Okay, but distinguish please between sharing information and discussion.
Mhm.
Is
Yeah.
discussion attempting to persuade?
Yes.
Because it isn't in my dictionary.
Mhm.
I mean, to me, to discuss something is to talk about my views on things, Kay says her views on things,
Mhm. And that's where it becomes a fine line.
Yeah.
Councilmember Tidwell, yes. Because if you're just sharing objective information, and the more objective and neutral it is, as far as what you're trying to accomplish, like here's an article on this, or here I found this online about that, about this bridge, or about this well, or something, and you just share it, that's fine.
Or here's my experience in these kind of
Mhm.
situations.
That
Is
would be appropriate as
information?
well, yes. But again, it comes down to that case-by-case basis, that then if you're saying the next step, you know, if you take the next
Yeah,
step,
no.
then that would, yeah. But if it's just sharing information, and it's the only way really information could be shared. For example, the division or department head, city manager would send out information to you, and he sends it out to all the council members and other members of staff, so, you know, it's objective and it's not trying to persuade one way or the other, although there's always an inference of persuasion, but I don't think that would really constitute, be it amongst council members or the city manager back and forth, an effort to persuade or a walking quorum.
So if we share information and then say something like, I hope we're able to move forward or
Come to
adopt
agreement.
this, or agree on this, is that?
Well, that's, when you start saying, I hope we can agree on this,
Yeah.
Councilmember, yeah,
Well,
then
I
you're
hope we
expressing.
do this?
Yeah, and that's also the persuasion, that's what you have to leave out
Yeah.
on those emails to everybody.
All right.
And then the reply would be, if I sent it out to the 3 of you as information, the only correct reply would be, thanks for the information, Doug, but not
Correct.
agree.
discussing it further, not
Okay.
writing back,
Yeah.
well, I think you're full of crap.
Well, but what if you say, holy mackerel, that's how you see this?
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain that more?
Mm-hmm.
What's wrong with that response?
Well, that gets into that gray area, but I would say that that's also appropriate.
Yeah,
Because you're just expressing an opinion.
Well, and
you're
just
not
asking.
Right, you're not asking the other person to vote a certain way
Mm.
or to take a certain position consistent with yours.
Yeah, this language is so imprecise.
Mhm.
It's why I have a job.
There you go. Correct. Yeah.
And on that topic,
Yes.
the email that you sent out, which was very helpful, that you and staff put together,
Okay.
under phone calls, for example, it says, cannot discuss or agree to vote on a certain way with enough members that can affect the outcome.
Mhm.
Does that mean that we can't discuss? Or that we can't discuss about voting in a certain way?
Can't discuss about voting in a certain
Okay.
way. Yep.
Okay, so we can have a discussion.
Yes.
We just cannot have a discussion about voting
Mhm.
in a certain way.
And the next step I would take would be to refrain from like a conference call.
Sure.
I'm just assuming you just mean like a one-on-one
Right.
conversation with one council member, yes.
Right.
Because you could, and just let me throw this in here for clarification, the League of Wisconsin Municipalities and the Attorney General's opinion also indicate that trying to get another person to sponsor some legislation or resolution is okay. So you are trying to persuade another council member. It usually takes two council members to get an item on the agenda.
Right.
So chances are, you probably will be talking to maybe 3 or 4 even council members individually, till you find somebody else that you know would help you sponsor some item. And they say, well, that's just, it has to be that way, you have to be able to do that, otherwise how could you ever find a second
Yeah.
person to sponsor something to get it on the agenda?
Right. So getting items on the agenda is
Yep,
open,
yep,
open
Okay.
season,
yes.
yeah.
But can you go on a fishing trip on that? Just say Sam and I came up with an idea for a agenda item to put on, well, not me, the two of you, because I can do it on my own. But
Mhm.
two council members decide they wanna, paint all the fire hydrants pink.
Mhm.
And they decide, before they got it on the agenda, could they call up the other 5 and kinda feel them out?
That I'd recommend against.
You know what I'm saying? You're
Yep.
stacking the deck.
Yep.
You can still have the discussion and you can
Mhm.
use the guys, well, I'm trying to find a second on this, but
Oh, but almost like,
That's
that I'd
not clear at
it's like a
all.
rose by any other name, you're still trying to.
that's what I'm saying,
Right.
that's not appropriate.
Yeah, that'd be like trying to do something indirectly that you couldn't do directly,
Yeah,
right?
so once you found somebody, you got your second, then you stop.
That's about it, yeah.
Okay.
I'd
So-
recommend against going further.
So let's say the item was painting all the hydrants pink. Is it okay to just say, Kay, just a heads up,
Yeah.
there's gonna be an agenda item on for the next meeting about painting
Yeah.
everything pink,
Sure.
just to let you know.
Yeah, information
okay.
can be exchanged, yeah,
But now, what do you think?
Yeah,
yeah. And if somebody just volunteers what they think about something, that's just gonna happen, and that's not a violation of anything. Because you're not actually overtly trying
Right.
to solicit some type of outcome for the meeting.
okay. And I don't mean to dominate here, but
No.
if you guys don't stop me, I will. The council often gets communications directed to all of us,
Mhm.
as we all know. And so we got a handwritten note that was scanned in the office and then emailed to all of us. I sent out an email to everyone on the city council and said, is there a protocol for dealing with this? Because clearly this person has to be responded to in writing,
Mhm.
because they did not give us an email.
Sure.
I got no responses.
Hmm.
So either nobody wanted to respond, or everybody thought, uh-oh, we can't talk about that because it's a walking quorum. In
So
that
asking for
situ-
procedure, that's again, not deciding the item, but
Okay.
asking, you know, right, it's almost like
Well,
the.
but we might be deciding, for example, I said, is there a protocol? If there isn't,
Mhm.
how about when we get these things, we have one person, you know, from time to time who's designated to be the responder? And I said, I would be happy
Mhm.
to take the first shot at it. Again,
Mhm.
no responses. Is that an appropriate thing to have sent out? I mean, it refers to protocol and administrative issues,
Mhm.
which we would never have as an agenda item.
Right, again, if it's correct, I think that would, under those specific narrow
Yeah.
set of facts, that would be appropriate, because you're not deciding the substance of the item.
Or the substance is so,
Mhm.
and in fact,
You're just asking a procedural thing, hey, we got
Yeah.
this, how do we respond to this? So that's not something that would normally come up in a public meeting. that the council would decide that would affect business, that affects the community. type of
But
thing.
it's an example of something that could be considered the business of the council, but which would be okay to discuss as a de minimis or an administrative matter,
More of a procedural, correct.
procedural
Right.
administrative
Yeah.
matter.
Yep. It's more on a protocol on how to handle certain matters, but it doesn't go to how you're gonna handle, again, one of those business or legislative or resolution items that you would take up as a council. So if you're trying to figure out what you're gonna do procedurally as a council when you're in an open meeting, that you'd have to decide at an open meeting.
Yeah, yeah.
I've taken it, and I don't know, I think Sam might do the same. We get a letter from or email from somebody on something that's on the agenda, and they wanted some answers and information on it. I will just reply to them, but I will not CC the city council.
Right.
Although the most recent one, Mark did, he
Mhm.
basically said how he was gonna vote, but sent it to all of us.
Sure.
And I think that's a fine line. So I've always taken the practice, unless I slip up, not to CC the city council.
Mhm.
So you won't know if I replied to Eric Pease, or if I replied to, whatever the last one, you won't know what my answer was, or if I even replied to him.
Mhm.
Because that's my concern, is that by answering their question, I completely agree with you on this, I think the whole ordinance is lousy,
Yep.
Well, I'm sending the message to 6 other people in the guise of replying to a constituent.
Okay,
Mhm.
but if I reply to Joe Fafufnik,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and I copy the rest of the council as reply all, and simply say, thanks, Joe, always good to hear from you.
Mhm. That's fine.
If that's all you're right, then you're not doing, but if you start discussing the merits of the case, I think you're getting really close to crossing the line by CC and the city council on it. Because you're basically telling the constituent how you're gonna vote.
And I cannot ever imagine a situation when I would tell anybody outside of the council how I was gonna vote. So, yeah, you're
Well,
probably.
you would if they're engaged in it, if they're concerned, they write you a nice letter and they say, I think the painting the fire hydrants pink is horrible, chartreuse is the color they ought to be, and here's the reason why. And then you write back and says, no, studies show this, and we have this one here.
Yeah,
And so I don't agree with you one bit, and I'm gonna vote to make it pink because it's the right way. It's easy to agree with somebody, it's when you write a letter disagreeing with them
right.
that you do, or if it's a contentious issue and you agree with them and you write all your reasons, and then you CC the city council, you basically told all 6 of us,
Yeah.
or I told all 6 of you where I'm at.
Without using names, in the past day or so, we have responded to some emails. Did you, and I replied to all, did you see any issue with those?
No,
Yeah.
but that's why we're having this meeting here, because
No, but
they
what?
can come pretty close.
What if it's on past action? Like if we voted to,
Well, I'm sorry. Well,
I don't recall seeing
Wald
one
didn't
from
read
you.
the emails.
I don't recall seeing one from you CC to me replying to a person.
Yeah, okay. Sorry.
okay. I was just curious then, I mean,
Well, like past actions and things. Again, if you're not trying to effectuate some type of change, or you're trying to get an agreement.
okay.
And that's where I think Council President
you're talking
Lockline has a
Briarmore?
good point.
We're being recorded here.
I know, but that's what you're talking about.
Yes.
That's the one, I saw those.
Yeah,
Okay, but that was after, that's what Sam just said, that was after the fact.
yeah, did you?
So we're
have-
just explaining our thinking, we've
Right.
already made the vote.
And
we're
you
not
didn't
gonna
have any
change our
concern
vote.
about those?
No, because it was after, that's what Sam
Yeah,
was doing.
okay.
But there's another one that's talking about something that's coming up at our next meeting regarding the boat launch.
Oh,
I'd even go a step farther to say that, the cleaner the better, and to have that no contact
Yeah.
is always kind of like the best and ideal. Practically, sometimes it becomes difficult. If you're communicating with the
no,
constituents
did you
saying-
just say we shouldn't have contact with each other?
Well, in a pure, clean world, but that's not necessary.
I think in a pure, clean world, that would be crazy.
Yeah, so I'm saying it's not possible.
No,
Not
I
possible.
don't
I
think
got yours,
it's,
but I don't think you got
No.
mine.
I don't think
My
it's
response.
desirable.
No, so if a council member wants to respond to a constituent and agree with them or say how they're going to take action or vote on a prospective matter to that constituent, that's actually okay. And if you wanted to copy the other council members with that same response, that's actually okay as well.
How
Because
does
you're
that
not
work?
you're not specifically asking other members to vote the same way.
No, but you're raising a flag and says, this is how
Yeah.
I'm gonna vote.
No,
Correct.
so,
It's right on the line, but that's
I was
still
gonna say,
okay. That's
That's
still
why I'm
okay to
asking,
do.
because I
Yeah.
thought that was crossing the line, because I will not,
No,
I
and
try to make it
listen,
practice unless I
you're
make a
taking the
mistake.
cleaner approach, right, but it's not necessary.
come on,
Okay.
get down.
If
on
you
the
wanna
blackboard.
copy everybody else to say that I've responded, so they know that you've responded to a
Yeah.
constituent.
I mean, that's the only
Yeah.
benefit, is they know that that person got a response rather than wondering if anybody replied to them.
Sure.
Right,
So if somebody wants to contact you about this item or that item of business, an ordinance or resolution, yeah, and you want to agree with that person in an email or text or phone call, yeah, I'm gonna vote for that, or no, I'm gonna vote against it. Again, you're not soliciting an agreement, tacit or expressed by other council members, to vote the same way. And you haven't entered into one. I mean, the main thing is you definitely don't wanna have an agreement or enter into an agreement with other council members outside the public meeting to take action a certain way. Then the next step is you don't wanna solicit an agreement
Yeah.
by other council members.
But we can still express.
Who you can express.
Because I mean, going in my 5th year in the city council, and with the, in my opinion, the horrendous code of conduct policy that was passed that, I'm sure I break on a regular occasion. I've always felt like as a city council member, I have less, First Amendment rights.
You do. You give up a few.
well,
Because, and then I agree with the quorum state laws and everything else, that we shouldn't be making backroom deals and agreements, but the fact that, if I write a letter to the editor, whether I can or can't use my title as a council member, I feel I've earned that just as much as, maybe someone who has a MD or doctor. I mean, it's obviously not the same level, but that I should be able to use that title in certain presentations. And so I'm glad we're having this conversation, because I think it sheds a lot of light on legally what we can and can't do versus the code of conduct is just a policy and it's not enforceable in any manner or way. I mean, technically, I think the code of conduct says we can't use iPads during meetings. Well, we have our iPads. It says you can't use electronic devices during.
that's ridiculous.
Or you can't look up information during the meeting.
So it's ridiculously out of date.
Well, it was
Well,
before we
yes and
had
no.
electronics, I thought,
There's
so.
pros and cons to it. The con would be you could have somebody at home taping you, telling you how to vote.
The agenda's on the machine.
That was,
How do I, and they won't give them to me in paper, so how am I gonna look at the agenda unless I
No,
look
I'm
at the
just saying.
machine?
you can use it to do the agenda, and you can use it, like Sam says, I think you can use it, my opinion is you can use it to look up stuff. If you
Oh.
wanna find,
Sure.
the exact ordinance. The tricky part is if you go on to, let's just say you logged into Facebook, and you knew people were watching it at home, and all of a sudden they all go, I agree, is that,
They can
Could
express
that-
their opinions, can't they?
well, I don't know.
Well,
It's a whole
it
other
sounds
problem.
like,
There's a whole-
it sounds like that's a whole nother
It's a
issue.
whole
nother can of
because
worms.
Yeah.
Is
the-
related to that, if before an issue is voted on, the paper contacts you and asks what you think about it? What's-
You may
what
talk to
happens?
them, because you're free to express your views.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yep.
So
There is
you
no
express your
restriction.
views
You
that
can express
way.
your views to the newspaper, the media, members of the public, and even as Councilmember Liebert was saying, even to each other. I mean, you could just copy everybody with how you're feeling about a certain issue. That doesn't violate anything.
Okay, so when I sent out an email to the whole council and I said, these iPads are useless with regard to documents, and I think we should have laptops.
That's
Did
fine.
that,
No, that's
okay.
fine.
And if somebody responded and said, I think that's a good idea,
Mhm.
is that okay?
That's okay.
Okay,
Yep.
all right.
See, nobody took it the next step to say, well,
Let's
let's all
Yeah.
sponsor this, and I got 4 people agreeing with me that we're gonna vote this way or that way on the topic at an open meeting.
And specifically, the purchase of equipment, would that be a,
That's an item of business.
okay, all right. So here's something I wrote down,
Mhm.
and let's make sure it's right.
Mhm.
Announcing your position or your opinion is not the same as soliciting an agreement.
Correct.
All right, Wald said this is
Yep.
correct.
Yeah, that's your free speech right that Councilmember Liebert was saying. I mean, otherwise, right, it makes no sense.
Okay,
You have to be able to express how you feel on a topic.
Mhm.
And that's what you're elected to do, is to
Right.
make those policy decisions. And you can express it in advance, and you can express it to each other, and you can communicate it without limitation.
Okay.
So we can't have a call for action.
Right, you can't say, okay, then let's all.
Agree with me to vote a certain way.
Right,
or-
let's all do this.
Mhm.
At that point, it becomes a walking quorum.
Mhm. You could say maybe even, well, I'd like to see this and that happen. I'd like to see us
Yeah,
as a
that's your
council
opinion.
decide this and that, correct?
Okay, so I'm looking at something I sent to the Sustainability Committee.
Okay.
And I said, I propose that we put this on our agenda.
Mhm.
Fine.
Yep.
I have to ask why we wouldn't incentivize sharing rides rather than pave over more land.
Okay.
Is that?
That's fine.
That's an opinion, I'm
Yeah.
not saying,
Correct.
okay,
No, totally fine.
all right.
I don't think the council, from mine, over like 35 years here, I don't think there's ever really been a violation that I can even conceive. I think council members have been, well, there you go.
Pretty close.
Well, you're not the first one people call.
There you go, that's true, because I don't have the facts, so, you know. But, as Council President Markline mentioned at the meeting the other day, I mean, I've never seen the council really make a decision other than a meeting. And I've seen people change their minds at a meeting, and then they announce that they've had one opinion, and they hear the public hearing, and so we've had very good councils here over the years. I don't think there's ever been any type of backroom, shenanigans that have gone
Yeah.
on.
Well, and I guess I would
Historically.
question the idea that somebody's email from home would sway a council person, because there are many people we're responsible to, not just
Right,
one.
right.
If somebody's being bought out that way, then
Mhm.
it'll show up somewhere else too.
Sure, sure.
Mhm.
Huh, okay.
So we need to look at that, quote, code of conduct?
I mean,
Sounds
maybe,
like it.
we can't make decisions, but,
No, but we can put it on the agenda.
On
There
the
you go.
agenda to discuss it.
Sure.
Maybe
Yeah.
just to possibly look at.
That's gonna be a hard one to put back in the box, so. Headline, council removes code of conduct for members.
No, we just modify.
Seriously, I think, you think about it, read what that contrary headline will be, and that's what it'll be, whether it was good intention or was a bad idea, that's what the thing will be.
But
I-
if we're doing something that's obviously against
Stupid.
it, and everybody sees it, what's the point of maintaining that?
It would seem to undercut the
Credibility.
of the whole thing.
Mhm.
Well, if two of you want to sponsor that, or the council president can do
Right.
that on, for his
Yeah.
own, so.
But you can do that on your own?
I can do it on my own.
Mhm.
And the city manager can also put,
That's correct. City
Whatever.
I'm
manager
sure I
can put
knew
that
that
as
when
on
I
the
voted
agenda.
for you.
That's all right. I haven't put any on by myself yet. I probably won't, because I do think you need to have at least two or so.
Well, I mean, as a practical matter,
Historically, over probably 75 years, from what I can understand, a city manager has never put an agenda item on in
Mm.
Janesville,
Well, you could be the first.
and the council
City
president
manager.
never has
Oh,
either.
city manager.
Yeah.
yeah.
And the council president
Yeah.
historically has refrained from just unilaterally.
I know a
putting
few
things on.
council presidents that.
Well, don't
Did that
they usually
unilaterally?
get a second though, don't they? I think there's always a
Oh.
second name on there.
I think last time we looked at the housing inspections, that council president, she put it on there
Yeah, I
unilaterally.
think Kathy put one or two on.
Yeah.
Oh, really, without any second? Interesting.
Yeah, I think she did. She wanted to have the discussion.
Just have the discussion. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think it went anywhere.
there wasn't any, or it got voted down, or there
Well,
was just
that's-
no action.
That's
but-
the risk.
Yeah,
You had the discussion, that's worth something.
yeah, that's worth it. I'll second anything just to talk about it. Well, I think you've answered a lot of the questions I've had, concerns. I think it's, maybe even just to make this a regular thing with just new council members might be a good precedent,
Mhm.
because it's,
Yes.
Let's do a few things on,
I agree.
if we talk to each other on email,
Mm-hmm.
do we need to go through the city email, or can we, if we know that they have a personal one?
You can go through the personal, but if someone wants to get a copy of that because it affects city business, then that particular email is public.
Okay.
And then somebody would have a right to request it, and you'd have to provide it so they could look at it.
Okay. Next one is phone calls.
Assuming it existed.
Correct. Right, and you can't destroy a record like that for 7 years.
Okay.
So even if you use your personal system, you have to
Yeah.
preserve it for 7 years.
Yeah.
Now, how about phone calls?
A phone call, don't have to record it. The existence of the call, of course, would probably be in the invoice or statement from the company or
Yeah.
however you would do that.
We can call
but,
any number we can find.
Correct. But the content of the phone call, then that's not a record because it didn't exist in any type of medium.
You know, that's a good point. My phone bills don't have a record of who I called.
Okay. So then there's no record.
Does anybody else?
Pay a standard fee and.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, the cell phone one does.
mine doesn't.
It might not be on the bill, but you can request it. They have it all there. They used to send them out for us. We used to get like
Right.
20
and then-
pages,
and
but
then,
they,
thank God,
for the
they
interest of
stopped.
that, but because nobody needed it, but if somebody wanted it, I'm sure they could go through and find it. I'm sure the record exists.
But I wouldn't have it.
Right. you
Would there be
have
an
it.
obligation for me to go to Verizon and say?
No. If you don't have possession of the public records law, that's a very good question, Councilmember
Yeah.
Tidwell. You have to have possession of it to be the custodian of it.
Okay.
Okay. But
If you
if
don't
somebody
have it, you
wanted
don't
it, they
have it.
they could figure out a way to get it, maybe through the courts.
Probably. There are forms of
Subpoena.
discovery, but.
US
that would be kind
Cellular
of-
or Verizon to produce it. Because they do that when somebody has a crime, they go through and look at their cell phone records.
Sure.
They don't have a copy of it either on their person, but they find them.
But that's a criminal matter.
Says who you called and how long the call lasted.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe
Yeah, they don't
even the
have
cell
that, they don't
tower.
tell you what it is, but.
Yeah.
But that can be damning if they always say, well, yeah, you know, these bribery ones where there's 5 or 6 calls going to that same address within 5 minutes of each other. The presumption that they weren't talking about which kind of ice cream to buy. And it could have been.
One never knows.
What about, you know, what about like Facebook and
Mhm.
that social type
That's all
media?
public, it affects the business. After talking about city business, or
Okay.
legislation or something, then that becomes a record as well. It
Okay.
exists.
Can you solicit people's opinions on that? I would assume you
Yes,
could.
you can solicit opinions, yes.
Okay. But you couldn't reply to them if I had a website out and I just said this, Sam couldn't come on and say, I agree with you 100%, or even like it.
You know, that's a really good question. I would say yes, he could, because again, it's not his soliciting your agreement to vote a certain way. So his
Okay.
expressing in advance how he's gonna vote on a topic is permitted.
Okay.
And that would just be another form of communication. No different than, as Councilmember DePrey said, if the newspaper asked each of you individually, or as a group, how you're gonna vote on something, and each one of you told a newspaper or television station how you're gonna vote, well, they know in advance,
Uh-huh.
but you haven't agreed to vote that way as a group.
And you
just
might
express
not.
your individual opinion, right? You could still change it at the, yeah,
Okay. So you could do that.
sure,
Yeah.
So you could you could hit like if you like, you could
yeah.
comment on it. Okay,
I don't think I've ever liked you on Facebook.
that's fine. I'm not asking for likes. I'm not asking for likes on that, so. All right, how about certain things that we have, city invited things, but they're not open meetings, say like Shine's coming here in a week or so.
That's a
And
public meeting.
That's an open invitation.
Yep, and then we would notice that with prior notice, because you're gonna be obtaining information that would affect your official actions later.
Okay.
It already is a matter of, city business, Shine, and the, approach, and the land transactions, and the financing, and the borrowing, and the TIF
Okay.
agreement, and all that, so the fact that it's an official type of activity, they're providing information.
So that's been noticed?
It's been noticed, and then, as a gathering, and those types of gatherings, then you wouldn't discuss amongst yourselves,
Okay.
or take any action. You couldn't vote there, because it's not that type of a regular or special meeting
Okay.
of the council, but then it's noticed, and then you can be there as a quorum of individuals.
No.
We used to see all the time a little disclaimer at the bottom
Mhm.
that one or more officials will be here, but no business will be.
Correct.
And you don't see those as much anymore. Are they just implied then?
Oh, I didn't know that they weren't putting those on there.
What's that?
I didn't know they weren't putting those on there.
All right. Seems like I hadn't noticed them all
Well,
the
I haven't,
time.
I haven't looked lately,
at
so I could make sure. That's a good idea to have it on there.
Yeah, it
Sure.
might not be you, it might not be the city, but I might have seen ones for other ones, town
Okay.
boards and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
Okay.
They used to always have it on boilerplate down at the bottom.
Right,
And
we'd
that-
have some boilerplate language for that.
Okay.
And are there, and then I recollect, are there legal protections for us then if If 3 or 4 people happen to show up to a private closed event, say Scott Walker for president, and all the 4 of us happen to show up at this private
Sure.
fundraiser.
Yeah, there was no agreement in advance to be there or take action. Social gatherings, inadvertent type of, an unexpected, unplanned
Funerals or
gatherings,
private,
funerals,
yeah.
any type of event like that.
That would be
You
very-
refrain from doing business, but, yeah, but you could do that and there's no notice necessary and it's
Okay.
not a violation of any law.
Yeah, but you can't sit there and talk city business either.
Correct, correct, that would be prohibited.
You can't go off to the side in front of everybody and
Yeah.
do that either.
Especially since we all aren't here. And I'm looking at the email of May 27th, I think, or the one that's got the, in blue, it's got all the do's and
The
don'ts.
do's and don'ts,
Yeah. Where it's, every place where it says cannot discuss or agree. The
Mhm.
way I understand it from our discussion is that we can discuss, but we cannot agree to vote a certain way.
Correct. You can't
that isn't what it
discuss
says.
seeking the agreement, I know, and that's, yeah, we'll change this.
Okay.
You can't discuss agreeing.
Right.
And you can't discuss attempting to get someone to agree. So it's you can't agree and you can't solicit the agreement.
Right.
But you could discuss
But
the
you
topic.
could discuss.
Correct.
Can discuss without an agreement to,
Act a certain way,
right,
or to take a specific
as
course of
long
action.
as there is no agreement to.
Agreement, correct, either adopt something or to block something from
Right.
being adopted.
Right.
So you don't wanna discuss or you can't have an agreement or discussion to agree
Right.
to, right, adopt something or to get it to fail.
But you can discuss short of an agreement to do that.
Correct.
Does that make sense?
You can agree on specific things within the topic?
I hear what you're saying, yes, to that extent, if you're not agreeing to vote a certain way.
Yeah.
Can
I
you give an
agree.
example of that?
Well, let's see. I'm thinking that there may be a topic that has several kind of pieces to it, and I'd like to be able to say, you know, I really think that's a good idea, or I'm gonna propose that this get changed to such and such, what do you think? It's not the whole thing.
And what do you think might get tricky? Saying what you thought is a good idea.
Well, I can see what you're saying,
So-
like a note issue where there's several items, you're going, oh, I like these 5 items here, but I don't like items
This-
7 and 9. Sure, you could say that, you could break it apart. I don't like this or that part of it.
So to be very specific, what if I said, I think it's stupid to require a kayak to pay a launch fee, but I think it's okay for bigger boats to have to do that. That's okay
That's
anyway,
okay.
because that's my opinion.
Yeah, that's
Right.
right,
So that doesn't matter.
correct.
But we couldn't have an agreement on kayaks versus
Correct.
everything
I
else.
think you could both say to each other, we don't like this idea of having kayaks pay fees.
Yeah.
But then you both couldn't say, okay, then I'm gonna vote against that at this next meeting, and you vote that way too, and then you couldn't say, I agree with that, so I'll vote the same way.
So we could agree to exempt kayaks?
No, you could not. You
Okay,
could
I
not
didn't
agree.
think so.
Right, no, no, but you could both state your opinion to each other
Yeah.
that you don't like the idea.
Okay, yeah.
So it's almost like that legal language of, you know, you can't directly threaten someone like I'm going to hurt you, or but you can say, well, I think, or I believe, or,
It might happen, or,
yeah, I don't know. There's a kind of, it's kind of along those.
I'm gonna kill you versus I wish somebody would kill you.
Yeah.
yeah, an indirect threat.
Indirect.
Not to use that example
Yeah.
again personally, but I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
Courts will go one way or the other. You can
Yeah.
wish somebody ill, but you can't directly threaten them with
Yeah.
words.
Hmm.
Just say I believe or I wish before something, and
Oh, you're thinking about libel law, I think.
maybe,
In
yeah.
my opinion.
In my opinion, right.
Joe Fafufnik is a dirtbag.
Yeah.
Joe Fafufnik can't sue me because it was my personal opinion. I didn't say Joe Fafufnik is a dirtbag,
Mhm.
so, poor Joe.
His last name. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, I think the nuances are pretty good. Good, clear, good
Does that
questions.
seem clear?
I do have
Sure.
another
Yeah.
question.
I'm good.
Okay.
So say there's certain council members I don't like, and I actively campaign for 2 friends that are running, or 3 friends, and all my buddies get elected. Before they're sworn into office, can you discuss with them like, yeah, we should make these changes, or we should do this,
You're not on the council.
if they're not on the council, if they're not sworn into office? Say they won the election, they've got the 2-week, I mean,
Well, again, if there's no agreement in
There's no
advance
agreement.
you could ask them, you know.
But they're not on the council. What
Yeah.
if there was an agreement?
When I did talk with other municipal attorneys about that in the past, they came to the opinion, right, you're not in office yet, so you couldn't
Yeah.
possibly form a quorum because you're not an official that's sworn in yet.
Right.
So there's no action they could take.
Yeah, you could get hit by a truck before you took office.
Sure, candidates could agree amongst each other, right, and then that doesn't affect, yeah, and I know business because they're not officially
Yeah,
sworn into that office yet.
okay.
I think there'd be a fine line though.
Mhm.
Again, yeah,
'Cause they're
Yeah.
especially
actually-
once you've been certified
they're
as
actually
a
council member elect,
elect.
so they're
yeah.
just candidate.
Yeah. But there's a difference between violating the law
Mhm.
and acting inappropriately.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that does, you know, probably the rare exception would, yeah, a point in time of actually becoming a governmental official, not put you in a different category where your discussions and agreements would,
So,
Okay.
once you've raised your hand, then.
that's it. Yeah, then no agreement.
All right.
I'm sure I'll stumble on this a few times, so.
No problem. Anybody has a question in the future, people have asked me in the past too, and just feel free to
And-
give me a call or email or something.
Walt has given me his secret home phone number, and
There
I'm
you
sure
go.
he'd give it to you too.
Yeah.
Encourage you to call at midnight anytime.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true, and I've gotten calls at different times, 11 o'clock, midnight.
Unless it's during his favorite TV show.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay.
Calls after 8 or 8:30, they're never good.
Thank you.
Hey, my pleasure, glad to help. Thank you all.